Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar titled Administering the ArcGIS Platform. My name is Ian Greensmith, and I'm a higher education analyst working with the Education and Research Group out of our Toronto office. In this webinar, we'll discuss methods that enable ArcGIS Online Administrators to configure access to the ArcGIS platform more effectively and present the best possible user experience for students and faculty. Within this discussion, we're primarily going to focus on subscription configuration, but really touch on some related topics like the concept of identity. And I'll show you a common workflow that can be used for inviting named users into your school subscription. We'll also look at content management workflows for any data, existing services that you already have published from your own ArcGIS server instance, web maps and apps as well, and how you go about managing them. And then finally, we'll look at how an administrator of ArcGIS Online would go about managing licenses for ArcGIS Pro. Some key terms that I'll reference throughout the presentation that will help provide context for really what we're talking about are organizational account. This is your school's ArcGIS Online subscription, which you are entitled to as part of your education site license. The terms organization and subscription are interchangeable, and I will use these both throughout the webinar. Portal, that is ArcGIS Online and Portal for ArcGIS. Within the platform, there are two flavors of portal. ArcGIS Online, which is a cloud-based portal, and Portal for ArcGIS, which is the on-premise equivalent. For the purpose of this webinar, I'm going to focus on the portal integrated with ArcGIS Online. Identity, and when we're talking about identity, we're referring to named users and roles. I'll spend some time discussing the concept of identity and its importance across the platform. At a high level, anyone who has access to ArcGIS Online is considered a named user, with a predefined role that determines your access level and capability. Items, so these being any data, hosted services, web maps, and apps. If you look at ArcGIS Online purely from a content management perspective, any data you upload, service you register, or web map or app you create within ArcGIS Online is considered an item. And then finally, ArcGIS Pro. This is Esri's new 64-bit mapping application that is tethered to ArcGIS Online. So with these terms introduced, let's move on and make some sense of where ArcGIS Online fits in relation to other ArcGIS products that you may already be familiar with. ArcGIS Online is a collaborative, cloud-based service that allows named users to use, create, and share maps, apps, and data as hosted services. ArcGIS Online represents a departure from traditional software for Esri in that each time you log in, you're actually using the most current version of the software. Updates to ArcGIS Online are incorporated into the platform approximately 3 to 4 times per year, and we make sure that we post any changes out to our higher education listserv, of which the majority of you who are attending this webinar today are part of. As we'll discuss in the next slide, ArcGIS Online is part of the ArcGIS platform. It doesn't replace any of the other components, but rather complements it. So you can use ArcGIS Online to extend the capabilities of ArcGIS Desktop, of Pro, Server, and any of the web APIs or runtime SDKs that you might be using at your school. ArcGIS as a platform has a number of different components. While the desktop still may be a common way to manage your data, perform analysis, and produce cartographic outputs, with ArcGIS Online, it's possible to leverage the cloud to publish that same data as a hosted service. And once it's available as a service, there are a wide range of apps that can consume these services. So if you follow the red arrow down on the left-hand side of the screen, this is your publishing workflows, starting from the desktop and publishing up and making those services available. And then if you follow the red arrow up on the right-hand side of the screen, that's your consumption workflow. So that same service can be consumed by yourself or by others, whether it's across desktop, web application, or a mobile application. Beyond the initial planks of the platform are solutions built on top of it. And as it relates to education site licenses, it's actually quite interesting because there are a number of solutions that have been rolled out and made part of the education site license this year. Solutions such as Business Analyst Online, Community Analyst Online, and GeoPlanner for ArcGIS are now available to education site licenses and can be accessed or procured through the ArcGIS Marketplace. And I'll walk you through the Marketplace in our first demonstration. Separate from that are apps. These are apps that you can download on a tablet or on your phone, for example. These are apps such like the collector for ArcGIS. The ArcGIS Marketplace provides your organization a way to discover and access apps and data to use within the ArcGIS platform. These apps and data are built to leverage and enhance what your school is already doing with ArcGIS Online in the form of both fee and free apps and services that are created by Esri's business partners, some Esri distributors like Esri Canada, and by Esri themselves. And the nice thing about the Marketplace, once you configure access to these applications for your subscription, you only have to do it once. So let's walk you through a high-level overview of ArcGIS Online, and we'll end up at the Marketplace. So a common landing page to interact with ArcGIS Online is the ArcGIS.com website. And if you were just to type in ArcGIS.com into a web browser, this is the page that you would be brought to. You can learn a lot about ArcGIS Online just by, in its capabilities, by either watching a video or scrolling down and learning more about some of the capabilities that exist. The real power behind ArcGIS Online, it comes from when you are authenticated into the platform, so you sign in as a named user. So we'll do that now. What I want to show you is the subscription that our education and research group have. So when you sign in as an administrator, so I've signed in as an administrator, given the role that I have, and this is the view that you're able to see. You can see your subscription status here in the top, on the right-hand side. That's the number of credits you have remaining, when your subscription is up for renewal, and your subscription ID. Beyond that, the table here in the center of the screen lists all of the named users who are known within ArcGIS Online. So you have their full name, you have their username, the date they last logged in, and any role that's associated with them. As an administrator, you have the ability to actually perform a number of functions right from this page. If you wanted to change a person's role, you could do that here. You'll see here that there are a number of predefined roles and one custom role here. Alternatively, if you wanted to manage this user's items, so you wanted to delete items, you wanted to transfer ownership of items from one student to another or from a student to a prof, you could do that here. You could see all the groups that they're part of. Something that can happen is that students forget their password. So it's quite easy to have that password reset, and an administrator can actually do that just by searching for the named user and choosing reset. And as I said, you can also either disable the member or delete the member as well once you've removed all of their content. The last thing I'll show you in this subscription relates to usage. And if you are interested in tracking usage of ArcGIS Online and how named users are interacting with it, the best way for you to do that is through this status dashboard or the usage dashboard. So click on that, and that'll bring you to a new page. So it still has the same metrics that you would have seen on the right-hand side of the screen before, so it still has the credits remaining. But now it actually breaks down for really the past 14 days, for the past 2 weeks, how many credits have actually been consumed. And actually, I can change this to be the last 90 days, for example. And really, you can start to see over the course of a 90-day period what our group is consuming credits on. A large part of it is on storage, and I'll address storage with regards to service credits when we get to our common questions. But beyond that, we have published content and analytics. The more you click into this type of information, the more comes up. So you can really drill down to see exactly what was done. And that's just at the credit level. If you were trying to pinpoint credit usage, and you can actually do that right down to the named user themselves. So here, as myself, if I wanted to investigate myself, I could do that just for the period of 1 day. But I could look at also the last 30 days. What's happened in our subscription? Which named user has consumed the most credits? And there's a lot of really useful information. You can even see the type of layers that they've published, the name of the layer that they've created, and even if I hover over these points here, you'll see that there is a digital footprint of where they actually where they're actually creating this content, where they're using ArcGIS Online to do that. So a very useful tool, and I can't promote this tool enough just for purely tracking the status of things. I want to change gears just to another subscription, and this is the subscription we're going to use for the remainder of our discussion today. This is a trial subscription, and I'm sure a number of you who are on the call at some point did create a trial subscription. They're good for 30 days. Actually, they're good for 60 days now. Gives you up to 200 credits, 5 named users. So for the purposes of this seminar, it's perfect. You can see here that I'm the only named user who's within the subscription, but we're going to build on that throughout the session. The first thing I want to show you is how you, and I'll reinforce the concept of groups later on in the slide, but I want to touch on groups because where we're going to go next is to the ArcGIS Marketplace. And for any app that you get access to as part of the education site license, you'll either have, Redlands would have either created a group for you within ArcGIS, within your subscription, or you can manually create the group yourself. And that's what I've done. So I've created this apps group. I'll click into it. And this is a group that I've controlled the settings of it so that I'm the only one who can contribute to it. It's only available to those who within the organization, so it's not shared outside of the organization, as content can be shared outside. And what I want to do next is I want to go to the Marketplace. So the Marketplace will then show you how we can connect the two. So the Marketplace, you just go to marketplace.arcgis.com, and you're more than welcome to browse along with me if you want, or review at another time all of the apps and services that are available. So I mentioned that Business Analyst Online is now part of the Education Site License. So I can search just for business, hit enter, and anything that's been tagged with business is now going to show up in the search results. Now there are a number of Esri created apps and a number of apps that are created by business partners and even developers as well. But the one we're interested here is Business Analyst Online. I can click on this, I can find out more information about it, and because it's already available to my subscription or to my organization, I'm going to click on View Item. Now you'll recall from the other tab that I had 3 groups. One was Apps, Data, and this last one, GO3IO3, represents a course. I want to share this app with my Apps group, and I'm going to click OK. And that's all you need to do. What you notice now is that the page refreshes and the URL changes as well. So now it actually goes back to my higher education subscription, and the item is tied to this group. If I switch tabs, I just refresh my page, you'll see here that the Business Analyst Online app is now part of my apps group. And that's the last thing I want to show you for this initial part. So let's get back to the slides. In this section, I want to take some time to talk to you about the concept of identity within the ArcGIS platform. Within this smaller topic, the two broad questions I want to try to answer for you are what it means, what identity means to an administrator, and what identity means to a student. As a named user, you can unlock maps and apps that can be used on any device, anywhere, at any time. When you log into an ArcGIS app, your identity makes all of your maps and any content that you've created before available to you. So it doesn't matter where you are. You can be productive immediately. Based on your identity or on your role that we'll touch on in the next slide, you're able to access groups, new resources, and even share geographic information both inside and outside of your organization. As an ArcGIS Online Administrator, the identity concept offers an efficient and flexible licensing method that can be applied across the entire organization. And as I referenced in the first demonstration, it is a great means of gathering user-level reporting and metrics based on their usage. The final thing I'll mention here on this slide is that ArcGIS Online supports Security Assertion Markup Language, or SAML as it's pronounced, for configuring enterprise logins. So if your school is interested in connecting with this service provider, which ArcGIS Online would be, you would just have to have a single sign-on system that is SAML 2.0 compliant. Examples of that are well documented on the help pages of ArcGIS Online, but there are also other examples are Active Directory and Shibboleth. As a student with a named user account within ArcGIS, it means you save and organize your items under your username, and that's actually quite unique. Beyond that, and related to roles again, you can be granted special privileges. These are privileges such as that'll help you complete assignments and tasks, whether it's geocoding, spatial analysis, geo-enrichment, or demographic analysis. And as a content owner, something that else is that is unique to the ArcGIS Online subscription is that by default, any item that you upload, that can be a shapefile or a file geodatabase, or service that you register from an existing ArcGIS server site, is private by default. And when I go back and show you later in later demonstrations, you'll see that it says that it's not shared. That's the equivalent of it being private. And it's private until you're ready to share them. That is, share them with a group, or share them with the organization, or share them outside the organization and share it publicly. When it comes to adding named users into the organization, you do so by inviting named users in. And administrators can add named users by inviting them to join on their own or adding them directly in. And part of this process includes choosing how to establish your accounts. So there's the enterprise login example that I mentioned, but there's also the option to add members automatically without sending an email. So that is, you know their email address, you know you assign them a username, and you assign them a password. The one I'll show you in this next demonstration is sending invitations to pre-established usernames. So that being that I know their names, I'm giving them a username, I'm assigning them a role, and I'm just going to send them the invitation. And then the student receives an email to click a link, and then they can log in, set their password, and right away be part of the subscription. So the nice thing about some of the new invitation tools that have been released this year, and actually quite recently in our July update for ArcGIS Online, is that you don't have to do this one at a time. So it can be a bit daunting for those of you who teach classes that are quite large and you want them to have access to ArcGIS Online. You can actually do batch invitations. So you upload via CSV file and send those invitations in bulk. So let's switch gears. We'll go back to the higher ed subscription, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Just wait for my screen to refresh. There we go. So I'm back on my organization tab, and the first thing I want to do is that before I invite the users in, and I'll come back to this tab here that says invite members. Before I invite anyone in, I want to define a custom role. To do that, I click on Edit Settings, and then I'm going to click on the Roles tab. And here you'll see that there are 3 default user roles, or default roles that come out of the box with ArcGIS Online. That's the administrator, that's the role that I have, and that's the role a number of you have in your subscriptions. Publisher, which just removes all administrative capabilities, and then user, which strips out any publishing demonstration that is tailored towards students. And you can have more than one role, but to do that you want to create a custom role. So we'll click on Create Role, we'll give it a name, I'm just going to call it Undergrad. I'll give it a description, just a simple role. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to choose a template. So based on the level of access you want to provide to your named users, whether it's a student, whether it's a prof, whether it's or whoever wants access to your subscription, these templates actually do help you quite a bit. Unique to education is a student template. So we'll scroll down a bit and you'll see as soon as you select that template that you have a number of privileges that have been granted to it, as well as premium content capabilities and administrative privileges. Note that with the student template, all of the administrative capabilities have been stripped away. That makes sense. You wouldn't, at a high level at least, I don't think you would want students to have access to other students' content, to be able to review their content, to be able to change ownership, to delete their content, change their role, even delete the user. That doesn't make a lot of sense. So this template has all of those capabilities stripped away. But the student is able to create a group, they are able to publish content, and they are able to share content as well. In this example, what I want to show you is how you can just quickly toggle this information on and off related to capabilities. So, as I was referring to privileges back in the slides, so we can strip out geocoding, network analysis, geo-enrichment, and demographic analysis, just leaving the spatial analysis tools and elevation analysis. And that's fine for now. So I'm happy with these changes. I'll save my role. The role's being created. I can actually go back and update this at any time. And then any student who's been assigned that role, their privileges are immediately reflected. I'll save my changes here. And now I have that role created, and I'm going to invite these named users in. Before I click this tab here, I want to show you just the CSV file that I'm using. So you see here, I have the student's first name, last name, I have their student ID. And what I did for their username, I just concatenated their first name and their student ID together. It's a simple way to create a unique student ID. So if you were hoping to have, a John Smith user account, the chances are having a John Smith user account is already taken. But if you had the student's first name or even their initial of their first name plus followed by their student ID, that's more than okay. And again, that's not necessarily something that you want to do, but it totally depends on your school. And then the last thing I'll show you is the role. So the role, we have the undergrad, and that will follow through as I'll show you now. So we'll click on Invite Members. I've pre-established their usernames, so I'll click Next. Again, I can do it one at a time, or I can do it from a file. I'll select my file, I'll browse to it, and now ArcGIS Online will quickly read through the CSV file, parse out the information that's relevant to it, and now I can review it If I wanted to make changes to Ethan's username, I could do that here. If I didn't want to add Ethan in right away, I could just remove him. But the role is populated because I have an existing user role or custom role that I've created. If the role, if you see something different on your invitations, it's because, could be two reasons. Primarily, it means that the role hasn't been defined yet, or you've misspelled something in the role. So it could, rather than being undergrad in the CSV file, the custom role is called undergraduate, for example, or just UG, something like that. The last thing I'll show you, and what I think is quite useful, and this is something that was released 2 weeks ago in the July update for ArcGIS Online, is to bulk assign. So I'm bulk inviting students into the subscription. Now I'm going to bulk assign them to groups. So remember the groups that I have created here. I have my apps, data, and my course, GO3IO3. I don't want to give them access to the data group, but I do want to make sure they have access to Business Analyst Online. So I give them access to the apps group. And then this is the course that the students are enrolled in. So this is the group that I would assign them to. Now, anything that the prof wants to share with that group, the students would be able to see immediately. Once I do that, I can send the invitations. The invitations have been set. I'll return to my organization. And now I just have to wait for these 1, 2, 3, 4 students to log in. And once they log in, I'll be able to track how they're doing. So let's change gears and get back into our slides. This next section is going to focus on some strategies for managing your organization's content. And while there's potential for this subject to cover more than is relevant in the time that we have, I'm going to focus on leveraging some existing services, that is how they can be registered with ArcGIS Online. I'll touch briefly on uploading and publishing your own content as items that can be managed within ArcGIS Online. I'll touch also on some of the new mapping capabilities and metadata capabilities that have been released recently. And then finally, reinforce the concept of groups. So we touched on groups for students and what they have access to in terms of apps. In this workflow, I want to show you basically the exact same thing as it relates to data and services. If you have pre-existing services that have been published with ArcGIS Server, they can be registered with ArcGIS Online and shared with students so that they are discoverable within your subscription. Any user can take advantage of the new smart mapping capabilities available within ArcGIS Online that were released a few months ago. Also, as an administrator, you can enable metadata access for any named user and give that named user the ability to upload and modify metadata on top of the data that they've already uploaded. And finally, just to revisit this concept of a group as an essential building block for the organization of sharing apps and content with specific named users. And I can't stress the importance of that enough. So we'll jump back into the subscription and take a look at some of these capabilities. So we've spent a lot of time looking at, in the My Organization tab, we've edited some of the settings. We've even invited members in. Now I want to jump down to the named user level. And to do that, so I'm signed in as myself, and I'm just going to click on My Content. So now, on this page, I find everything that's associated with this named user. So Greensmith, my last name, any content that's uploaded to it is tied to me. The first thing I want to show you relates to a map service that I've found. So this is a population density map service. There's a lot of great information in here, a lot of detail as well, right down from the census division layer to the dissemination area for both 2006 and 2011. And what I can do is just copy this map URL, go back to my content, and add that as an item from the web. And here I have the option to load it in as an ArcGIS service, that's exactly what it is. Or if I had an OGC service like a WMS layer, I could load that in. If I had a web-linked KML layer, that would also work. Or any document for that matter could also be added as an item. So I'll click in here, I'll paste that, and watch what happens when I click into the title bar. You notice that any information that's associated related to the title and tags from the service were automatically populated. And that's great, and that can save you a lot of time. So finally, we'll just click Add Item. And now what it's going to do is it's going to upload the item. So you're not copying all of the content, so that all of those geographic boundaries and all of the census-related information. You're not doing any of that. All you're doing is you are referencing the ArcGIS service within ArcGIS Online. Once you've done that, the next thing to do is to share it. And what you'll do here is you'll just share it with your data group. So the data group is something that I built for profs and teachers and even TAs to access if they wanted to make stuff available for students. This is the initial landing spot for them. And there's no reason why you can't share things with more than one group. It's just the workflow that we're using today. So we'll click OK, and now that's shared. Go back to My Content, and you'll see that the population density service is listed as a map image layer. The next thing I want to show you is how you can upload data from your own computer. And to do that, I'll just click on Add Item and choose From My Computer. Now here, I have a shapefile that's been zipped up. And if I hover over this file, you'll see that all of the file types that are associated with it. I have my default 3 file types that make up the shapefile, and then I have an additional projection file and even some additional metadata that's stored into it. So I'll select that. I'll click Open. ArcGIS Online is smart enough to recognize that there is a shapefile within that zip file, and it gives you the option immediately to publish this file as a hosted layer. And I'm going to leave that turned on. It's going to upload the content anyways, but it's just adding on this additional task that makes a lot of sense if the goal in the first place was to publish a hosted layer anyway. I'll give it a tag, just call it census, and add that item. So the first thing it's doing is it's uploading the item. That doesn't take very long because the file's not very big. The second thing that it's doing, and that's what you're watching on screen right now, is that it is publishing the service. So we'll give it some time to finish, and then we'll transition into the map to showcase some of the smart mapping capabilities. Okay, so our layer is now published as a service. What I want to do is I want to open it. I'm going to open it in a new map. So a couple of things have happened, and if you're used to ArcMap, this may jump out to you as being a little strange, but this is actually showcasing the new smart mapping capability for ArcGIS Online. What you're looking at are census tracts for Halifax, Nova Scotia. With this software is smart enough to look through the attribute table, and it picked out my median age column. I also have information on lone parent families, median income, stuff related to education, and total population. So it's grabbed my median age, and it's also symbolized it for me. So I didn't have to do any additional steps. I can just add this layer to a map. It symbolizes it automatically, and I can keep going. If I want to change how it looks, I can just go into the options. There are symbols to change. I can even change if I wanted it to be above or below a specific value, so based on the average, for example. I can click on that, and now if the average is around 40, then that we have high areas for the higher ages and lower ages. So it's quite useful. You can even change the classification scheme and go into quite a lot of detail with this. So that's the smart mapping component. I'll click OK, and you can there's a lot more that you can do. If by default it loads when you load in a layer and it symbolizes it the way you don't want it to, then you could actually just select this option to just show the locations for points, for example. You could do that. When you're done, just click done. And now let's save our map. So what we're doing here is we're creating another item within ArcGIS Online. Just give it a name. Give it the same tag as before. Tags just help you search for content within ArcGIS Online, whether that's directly within your subscription or if you're looking for something outside of your subscription. The tags are going to help you find that information. And the item you're saving is a web map. So it's an additional item that is quite useful. It's actually a mandatory item to have if you're going to be leveraging apps such as the collector for ArcGIS. If you made a service available and were wondering why you couldn't see it within the collector, it's because it's not part of a web map. You won't be able to access services directly. Everything revolves as a web map for the applications that tie into it that are built by Esri. So I have my web map created. Now I'm going to share it. So this is a web map I've created for my Geo3io3 course. And then beyond that, if I didn't like the way it looked, I could actually even choose from one of these configurable app templates. So I could actually say, look through any number of these applications. There have been a lot of blog posts recently about story maps and their capabilities, and I think there's a lot of strong use cases for them. For this, I'll just show you how you can preview one of these apps just by clicking on Preview. So I'm just going to preview the basic viewer, and what it's going to do is it references the census tracts web map, pulls that content into it. The legend has my information, how I symbolized it up here. If I wanted to share that, if I wanted to measure or even find a specific address within Halifax, I can do that all within this application. And what's nice is that I'm actually just previewing this. This isn't something that's permanent. So I'll close that, and I'll cancel out of this, and I'll show you one of the last things you can do as an administrator to allow users to create metadata. So go back to your organization. And as I mentioned in the slides, metadata is enabled by the administrator, but individual items are configured and edited by a named user. So to enable the metadata, we'll just click on Edit Settings, and then I'll click on the tab called Item Details. And all I'm going to do here is I'm just going to check off Enable Metadata. Now, out of the box, there are a handful of metadata standards that Esri supports. This is by no means final, but at least out of the box you see that there are a number that are available to you. For our purposes today, I'll just leave it as FGDC, and I'll save my changes. And now I'm going to actually go back to my content and show you the workflow now. So under my content, I'm interested in reviewing the metadata that existed for the census tract feature layer that I've published. So I'll click on it, and notice on the top bar here, you'll see a metadata tab. So you can just click on that, and now this page will load with the metadata that exists for the census tract feature layer. And you'll see quite quickly that there is no metadata that exists. So you can either manually upload this information And that's if you want to do that, that's entirely up to you. Or if you had existing metadata for a feature layer that you uploaded, just click on Open, and you're able to upload the metadata. So long as the XML file that you're uploading is in an ArcGIS metadata format, then it'll be able to be read and be used to populate not only the metadata here, but also the item details as well. And finally, there is a validate option as well. So at least initially, what you have are, when you click the validate button, it's looking for a publication date, an organization name, a description or abstract, and then finally the purpose of the data. So this is pretty useful tools that exist within ArcGIS Online that can help you and your students be more productive in your coursework and really just save time. So as I mentioned earlier, ArcGIS Pro is tethered to ArcGIS Online. You use ArcGIS Online to specify which named users have access to ArcGIS Pro. Just like in ArcGIS Desktop, in order to use ArcGIS Pro, the software first has to be available. So whether it's working with your site license administrator or you yourself are able to administer the software needs to be downloaded. That is, ArcGIS Pro needs to be downloaded from your MyEsri account and installed on school computers. ArcGIS Pro is part of ArcGIS Desktop in that it has 3 levels, just like Desktop has. It has basic, standard, and advanced, and each provide additional levels of functionality. You assign each named user 1 license and any of the optional extensions that are currently available within Pro. If this sounds familiar to you, desktop users, it should. And for those of you who are familiar with the ArcGIS Administrator application that's installed locally with every ArcGIS Desktop install, it's the exact same process where you would open the app, you would license the software, even check out licenses, or even license additional extensions. As an administrator, you can manage these licenses individually, just like invitations. So the workflow that I showed you for invitations, when I show you and I switch back to the website, is identical for making bulk assignments of named users to give them access to ArcGIS Pro. Also similar to desktop, ArcGIS Pro has the ability to work in a disconnected environment as well. So what you would do is when Pro opens, you authenticate into the software. And that's the way it works, unless you check that for it to remember you on the application. You would authenticate in, and then you have the ability to check out a license and go out into the field. To check the license back in, all you need to do is sign back into your organization and check the license back in. So let's switch gears here and look at licensing options for ArcGIS Pro. So I'm back in my organization tab, or in kind of the main portal for where I see my named users. And for those of you who have been using Pro, you'll know that how you go about doing that is through this tab here called Manage Licenses. You'll click on that, and you'll see here what's tied to my subscription is that I'm entitled to 5 named users. And that means I have a maximum number of 5 licenses that I can allocate to users. And to do that, I can do it any number of ways. I can do it individually. For example, for myself, I say, okay, I'll click on my name. I see that I have advanced already assigned to me, spatial analyst, 3D, and network. I'll choose those extensions, and I'll assign those licenses. I get some feedback saying that's been successfully configured. Now that's great, but what if I wanted to do that for more than one? Now there are options available right here within this setting. So I could search by name if it was an individual student, or I could search by role. So if I wanted to give everybody who had the undergrad custom role. I could give them all, I could select them all here and then configure their licenses immediately. Just so advanced is selected here, and I would give them access to spatial, 3D, and network. Click assign. I get feedback that it's been created, and now Liam, Olivia, Ethan, and Sophia would all be able to authenticate right into Pro right away. There's no lag. You'd be able to go in right away. Alternatively, if you wanted to do this for a class or for a group for that matter, you could do that as well. So based on, these are the members who are part of the GO3IO3 group. I could select them all and configure them. And actually I could even either update their license or revoke all of their licenses. So this is useful if you, at the end of term, for example, or if students graduate. It's a good way to basically reconcile all of your licenses for Pro, or the majority of your licenses for Pro, and ensure that you have enough of a balance to be able to help you for intersession, for example, or just planning for future terms. So I'll just show you how you can revoke all of them here. You get some feedback, and you're starting from scratch again. So that's quite useful. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them when we get to the common questions section. But it's, I think Esri's done a really good job of streamlining this workflow. Is there work to be done? Sure. It would be nice if things could be simpler. But in terms of the workflows that I've shown you, I think if you follow these, it will alleviate a lot of stress and just allow you to be more productive in what you're doing and not having to spend a lot of time managing someone else's content or passwords or ensuring that people have licenses. So we'll switch back to our slides. So this is an opportunity to address some common questions that come up from time to time. And I'm conscious of the fact that we can't address all of your questions and concerns, but this should serve as a good starting point for knowledge transfer if you're attending on behalf of a group of individuals who couldn't be here today, or you're here to learn for yourself. So based on the topics that we covered today, feel free to enter your questions now, and I'll try my best to answer them. I have a few questions here that I'll use to kind of get the ball rolling. But by all means, please use the chat window and enter in your questions. And just while you guys are typing them in, from a platform perspective, first question is, as an administrator, do I have control over other users' content, for example, their services and web maps? Well, the answer is yes. And as required, you can modify those items, you can review them, you can even transfer the ownership to another user, or if need be, you could delete the user as well. The challenge with that is when you go to delete a user, ArcGIS Online won't let you delete a user if there is content or there are items tied to that user. So the first thing you want to do is transfer ownership of that content to either the prof whose course they were in, or even to an administrator's account, and then delete the username. How do I configure access to apps available within the ArcGIS Marketplace? Apps procured within the Marketplace need to be shared with a group, and as we discussed earlier in this presentation. And prior to getting the app, which is searchable through the Marketplace, you want to configure the group and add users as needed. You can add users before, or you can add users after. It doesn't matter. None of this stuff is really set in stone. What additional tools are available to help me manage an ArcGIS Online site and data? I think your best tool is the usage dashboard, or the status dashboard that I showed you at the beginning of the presentation. That's a great mechanism for you to be able to review credit consumption, to review what types of features are being published or what's being consumed. It also allows you to track down to that named user level. So if there were concerns about credit consumption and you saw that you were consuming more credits than you had expected during a given week, your first point is to go to the usage to the usage dashboard. Sharon, to answer your question, so the question is, can you set a limit that a user can consume for credits? This is a pretty popular request, one that I echo down to Redlands. That functionality, it does not exist yet. I was able to catch a glimpse of kind of what's coming for ArcGIS Online over the next 6 months, and what it does show is, that there are planned updates for credit management. So if that means credit allocation or for specific named users, like you're referring to, Sharon, I'm not sure, but these things are coming. I think your best initial approach, anyways, is to set up custom roles and really restrict what students do exactly what you want them to do within ArcGIS Online. Rosa is asking, currently my organization is showing 0 licensed members for ArcGIS Pro. What is the procedure to get activated for my institution? Okay, that's an interesting problem. The best thing for you to do is to follow up with your account manager and just to help troubleshoot that issue. And Rosa, I can also follow up with you offline. What you should see when you click on that Manage License tab is the total number of named users that have been allocated to your institution, in addition to any entitlement users. So that number should be quite large to manage an estimated student usage rate based on the term or the academic year. So I'll make note of this, Rosa, and connect with you offline. Just touching back on additional tools that are available to help manage content. For those of you who've been using ArcGIS Online for a while and who are members of our higher education listserv, we've posted recently on tools such as the ArcGIS Online Assistant. This is something that actually started as a GitHub project by Esri developers that really helps you copy content from one subscription to another. So, for example, you've changed schools. So you did your undergrad at York, and now you're doing your master's at U of T. Using the ArcGIS Online Assistant, signing in as an administrator, you would be able to transfer content between subscriptions and not have to worry about losing your content. Alternatively, if you had a trial subscription like I'm showing you today, you could transfer that content from, say, your Waterloo subscription or even your Lakehead subscription out into your trial. And beyond that, we have a business partner in the U.S. that has created a tool called Admin Tools for ArcGIS. And the business partner's company name is called GeoJob. And you can actually access that tool through the ArcGIS Marketplace just by searching for Admin Tools. Another question related to the platform. What are the terms of use for ArcGIS Online? Do I give up ownership for data that I upload? The answer is this. You retain ownership and control of all of the data and services you publish to ArcGIS Online. To use ArcGIS Online, though, to be able to publish services, you are required to temporarily assign ownership to Esri. And as soon as it's published, Esri doesn't own the data anymore. So again, it's just to use our services, just to make that content available, you just temporarily assign it to us. Some questions that have come in. Yes, the recording will be available. I'll send this out to everybody who's attended. Also send it out to the account managers as well. So if there are additional follow-up questions, they are an excellent point of contact for moving this forward. Do you suppose you could use a trial ArcGIS Online subscription with a limit of 200 credits for coursework? Absolutely, you could. The challenge is that you're then working in a bit of a bubble. I think a trial could work for group work, for example, so a group of 2 to 3 or up to 5 users. Absolutely. But think about the time frame you're working in. It's good for 60 days. So that might be more than enough time. But if it's a year-long project, then a trial is only really going to be able to get you started. And then after that, you'll have to work with the students to transfer it into the school subscription. A question that I actually do get quite often is, what should I do about the emails that I receive about my subscription expiring? The answer is nothing. No action is required. The subscription is a term license and is tied to your site license renewal. Once one renews, the other one renews. So you don't need to worry about if your anniversary date, for example, the anniversary date of the Education and Research subscription that I was showing you initially is October 1st of next year. Now, if your date is something similar, maybe your date is next week, you don't need to worry about that. You're not going to lose access to it. You're not going to lose any of your content. It's just an automated email, actually, that gets generated based on, there's actually similar ones that are generated for credits as well, if you're getting close to your credit quota for credit allocation for the year. And these are just automated ones. They're nothing really to worry about, but they actually are quite useful to have. Okay, let's look at some identity questions. What happens if I run out of named users? That's a good question. I think there are 2 ways to answer this. The first way I'll answer it is really reevaluating the need for the current named users that you have in your subscription. If it were pro licenses, for example, then you want to ensure that the person is still actually in the class. They haven't graduated already. And if they're not taking any more courses in that academic year that require access to ArcGIS Online. If you answer yes to any of those questions, then you're able to reduce the number of named users and bring your balance back up into something that's a little bit more manageable. The second way to answer it is really to engage your account manager or contact the Education and Research Group, and that's something that we'll be able to work with you to figure out the best way to get more named users for you. Some question that comes up, not so much in post-secondary, but it does come up in outside of education, is can I create generic user accounts and just share them with my staff, or can I share them with my students? And the answer is no, you can't do that. Our terms and conditions for ArcGIS Online are quite clear, and you're not able to do that. So if you were creating generic user accounts, that would violate the terms and conditions. Question came in, is there a way to place a limit on a user account? For example, if a student is scheduled to graduate in April 2016, can we set a limit so that the account will delete automatically? Oh, okay, so like a timeout type thing. That's a great question. I don't think that functionality currently exists. If that's something that would be beneficial for you, I challenge you actually to visit the ideas site that Esri maintains. And in that, you can actually post ideas and people can vote based on that idea. So there are a lot of ideas that are currently up there that people are voting on. I actually just received notification from Esri that one of my ideas that people had voted on had been implemented. And that's actually quite encouraging. So if this is something that you think would be useful for all of you, I think that that would be something to consider. Because you're right. Beyond that, you would have to remember that at the end of April, I've got to go in and remember who I added. But that's the nice thing about some of these administrative tools, especially this one from GeoJob. You would be able to go in and bulk remove students. But if a timeout functionality is something that you're looking for, then by all means, I would support it. So please visit the ideas site. So that's ideas.arcgis.com. And lastly, related to some things related to content management, what features on ArcGIS Online use service credits? Service credits are used only when you're storing content. So I gave a great example of our education and research subscription. So we spend a lot of our service credits on storage. But then you also consume credits for any spatial analysis you do, any geocoding you do, and any demographic and lifestyle maps that you consume as well. If you're looking for details about the rate of service credit consumption, that's available on Esri's service credit overview page. I can send out the link if that's of interest to you. Separate from that, though, what doesn't consume credits are actually viewing maps, interacting with applications. That actually doesn't consume any credits, and neither does using the GeoSearch toolbar. So that's your interactive geocoding toolbar that exists within the ArcGIS.com web map, and even the web application that I showed you had an interactive geocoding option. Those don't consume credits at all. One more question here, and then I'm conscious of the time. Is metadata automatically included when I publish a hosted layer? That depends. The answer is yes, but it depends. So if you publish from ArcMap and your map document properties are up to date, and those map document properties would be used to populate the item details for that hosted layer when you publish to ArcGIS Online. The workflow I showed you where I uploaded a shapefile and I published it directly didn't include the metadata. So to do that, I needed to enable metadata for the subscription, and then I needed to go back and if I had an XML file that I could upload, I could easily have uploaded that into the subscription, or into the metadata for that specific hosted layer. And one more question from the crowd: where can you get access to the administrative tool you mentioned to do bulk deletes? Okay, so I'll type that in to the. So you go to the Marketplace, and it's just called Admin Tools. I think it's Admin Tools for ArcGIS, and it's published by GeoJob. There's a free version and there's a fee version. So if this, I have posted to the listserv on this. I believe it was at the beginning of the year. So if you do keep track of those emails, they'd be in there. But Admin Tools for ArcGIS, and GeoJob is the publisher. So those are great questions. Again, if you don't want to ask your question here, or you just want to wait for my email address to come up again, it'll come up again in another couple of slides. But to summarize, we covered quite a bit, but it really centered around subscription configuration and related topics like the concept of identity. So we walked through a workflow of establishing a custom role and inviting named users into your subscription. We also looked at content management workflows and ways in which you can get access to your data, you can register your published services, even create web maps and apps, and even share them in a way that makes a lot of sense and can save you time. And then finally, we addressed on how an administrator would go about managing licenses for ArcGIS Pro. A great starting point for resources are actually the Esri Inc. help pages and What's New page. The teams that work on these two products are quite good at communicating any planned changes that are coming out. So in the July update, Redlands would have sent out an email to all of the to you, actually, to all the ArcGIS Online administrators, to let you know these are the changes that are coming up in the July release. Up until now, those changes have really just been kept for the distributor, or if you follow some of the blog posts that I know some of you do, you would have seen it that way. But anyway, these 2 pages specifically, in addition to Esri's social media presence, are a great way to stay informed based on what's happening with these products. And I try to stay on top of these trends as well. So anything that's come out new for ArcGIS Online, we try to make sure that people have that type of information. For something homegrown, a little bit closer to home, and some Canadian examples, there are 2 spots on our website that you should check out. The first, if you're not already aware of, is our lesson planner, where you'll find a wide range of resources that relate to what we've discussed today. Whether you're looking for desktop, online, or solution-focused resources, the tools built into the search functionality allow you to quickly refine or filter and find a resource that you can use. And they're completely open too, so you can modify them as you see fit. The second, if you're looking for examples of how ArcGIS Online is being used outside of education, that is our app showcase. So this is a landing page to showcase a lot of the web applications that have been created by Esri's user community, in addition to those that have been created by Esri Canada staff, whether it's for web seminars or for some of our user conferences. So I invite you to take the time to review both of those links. Finally, I just want to say thank you for attending. I know that I've gone a little bit over time, but I do appreciate you taking the time to listen in. My contact information is there on the screen. If you have any questions, please feel free to shoot me an email or give me a shout. Thanks, everyone.